Hi again then guys, and welcome to another specific car review on Gran Turismo Sport. And just before we get into this review, it needs to be said that yes, I am aware that there are new cars in the DLC pack for Gran Turismo Sport, and yes, I'm going to be reviewing them and doing tunes for them and doing rivals matches and all that kind of good stuff. So yes, you don't need to comment any more about that because I am aware of it. I just don't have enough cash to buy the cars yet, so I need to do some grinding because generally the money that I have on GT Sport I spend quite quickly. So bear with me on that. We will be getting to those cars in due time, of course, and for now we're going to review a car which, of course, you can see from the title is the Nissan GT-R, the new facelifted version of the R35. One of what we could safely assume are probably going to be the last iterations, most likely of the R35 generation. It's been refined more and more with your Spec Vs, your Black Editions, your Nismos. I think recently they showed some pictures of the new Nismo, the Nismo version of this car. But even this car in its own right is, at least for some people, a new welcome addition to the GT-R lineup, because it is of course an ongoing joke that there are way too many Skylines on Gran Turismo, and there always have been. In fact, I'm currently doing a series on the channel about the vehicles that have way too many cars on Gran Turismo 6 in particular. Tomorrow we're going to be doing another one for all of the RX-7s. However, in the case of the R35, that's not as much the case, because although there are a number of R35s on Gran Turismo 6 in particular, at least the variation between those cars is much more notable. The Nismo is nothing like the Black Edition, which is nothing like the Spec V, which is nothing like the Proto, which is nothing like the 2001 concept version. They are genuinely unique cars. And so, when I see a newer version like this, it doesn't really bother me that it's just another R35, because it's not really just another R35, it's a genuine new machine. So with that being said, how does this iteration of the GT-R, with, let's be honest, more limited upgrade capabilities than it would have had on GT6, especially in terms of sheer power, how does it stack up? Not in terms of just straight-line performance, but of course factoring in straight-line performance as well. Well, straight off the bat, this version that I'm driving has been detuned to the N500 class. I've dropped the weight as far as it can go with a level 5 tune-up, and I've got a level 1 power setting with a little bit less than stock, because stock on this car is a pretty healthy 564 horsepower. Of course, being a GT-R, you've also got a lot of torque, 467 foot-pounds, which incidentally is the same as the Group B rally car, which is pretty good, but unfortunately the weight of course is a lot higher than the Group B rally car, and certainly a lot higher than the racing version at 1770 kilos stock. But as I said, of course, this version is significantly lighter, and the version that I'm using here is basically a slightly reworked variation of the tune setup, which I made for this car, which is also on the channel. I believe that one was also for N500, although of course it can be remapped. As far as horsepower per tonne, well, the power is good, but the weight is so high, it's up there with cars like the Veyron and the Mercedes SLR, that it struggles to have an impressive horsepower per tonne unless you drastically reduce the weight. 319 doesn't sound that great. And to be fair, it's not all that great. You do need to upgrade it to start to improve that number. But the thing about the GT-R, and I have mentioned this before with a couple of other cars, like the 2017 Honda NSX in particular, which is easily this car's biggest rival on Gran Turismo Sport, is that the reason why those cars are heavier isn't just because they're all-wheel drive or they just made it heavier for the sake of it. They are heavier for good reasons. They are so crammed full of tech, in a similar way to something like a Veyron, in fact, or a Chiron now, that of course they're going to weigh more. They are basically now supercomputers that happen to seat 4 people. So, of course it's going to be a heavy car. Now that is never really going to change. In fact, the next generation of GT-R, the R36, if and when that comes, it's probably still going to be quite a heavy car, unless they just go full-on hypercar with it and make it a rival to the McLaren P1 and the Porsche 918, which they might do, but I wouldn't have thought so, because that's never really been the point of the GT-R. But even if they do, chances are it will still be heavier than a lot of its rivals because it's just so packed with quality content, quality production value. It's like a good video on YouTube, really. It's a car that has a lot of effort put into it, and you can tell. Cars like that you can always tell, because they're good to work with, they have great performance, and of course it's a GTR, so it's going to be fast. So to get more specific about this one in particular, what kind of differences are there in terms of how it actually drives compared to the existing ones? Well, the handling, I would say, is the most reminiscent to the Black Edition on Gran Turismo 6. That car is a little bit chunkier than many of the other GTRs. It's a little bit softer through the corners, but also really good to work with. You can feel like you've got a lot of room, a lot of range to tune that car. And in fact, that version of the GTR has the highest PP level potential of all of them, because even though the Nismo has more power and is faster in a straight line, it doesn't have the option of the full flat floor conversion, whereas the Black Edition does. So you can take it up to, I believe it was 704 pp or thereabouts, which is extremely high for a road car. Now, this one doesn't go quite that high in comparison, because of course the whole rating system is different now, but I believe you can get this one up around the N900 or even N1000 class, fully tuned. I haven't fully upgraded mine in terms of power, but based on what I've heard from people who have upgraded theirs, I believe that is the kind of power that you're talking at. Something like 970 or 980-ish horsepower. And of course, when you upgrade any vehicle to that kind of level, you expect it to become more challenging. Even if you don't upgrade the power at all and just increase the power limiter to whatever it is, around 600, 640, thereabouts, you can of course feel a difference in the handling. But being a GTR, it's such a forgiving car. Now, a lot of people have said that they enjoyed using my tune for it, but even if you don't use my tune, the GTR straight off the bat is a much easier car to drive fast. I wouldn't call it a beginner's car, funnily enough though. It's in this weird kind of sweet zone where people do consider the GTR to be a great, forgiving performance car. But at the same time, they don't consider it to be like the Mazda LM55 or some others, in that it's too beginner friendly, even though, funnily enough, the GTR is kind of the epitome of being OP in real life and in the game, but people don't consider it that way for whatever reasons. So it's definitely worth checking out. It is one of the better performance cars in the N classes, which is a fairly obvious thing. In terms of how different it is, it's not going to blow your mind, but it's a nice update both visually and in terms of performance, which can easily run with the best of them as far as road cars go. But that's it for this pick overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.